Chosen one. The wedding invitations had already been printed. The families had already chosen the future. But one name hidden inside your person's heart was about to destroy every plan they had made. And when the truth finally came out, nobody in that family was prepared for what happened next. Listen carefully, because this message is not reaching you by accident. There was a time when your person genuinely believed they could move on from you. They told themselves that life had to continue. They convinced their family that the chapter connected to you was over. They smiled when people asked about their future. They nodded when relatives discussed marriage. They even sat through endless conversations about potential partners while pretending that nothing inside them was breaking. But deep down, there was a secret they never revealed to anyone. Every single marriage discussion reminded them of you. Every future plan somehow led back to your name. No matter how hard they tried to create distance, your presence continued to follow them like a shadow that refused to disappear. Months passed, and pressure from family members became impossible to ignore. Relatives began organizing meetings. Phone calls became more frequent. Advice came from every direction. Some people insisted that your person was wasting time. Others claimed that the past needed to remain in the past. One by one, voices around them grew louder. Eventually your person stopped arguing. They became tired of defending feelings nobody seemed willing to understand. So they did something that shocked even themselves. They agreed to consider marriage. The moment that decision was announced, excitement spread through the family. Plans began immediately. Conversations filled every room. Names were suggested. Photos were exchanged. Expectations grew larger with every passing day. Everyone believed the story was finally moving toward a predictable ending. Everyone except your person. Because while the family celebrated, your person spent many nights awake. Long after everyone else had gone to sleep, they would sit alone and stare into silence. Their thoughts always traveled to the same place. They remembered conversations connected to you. They remembered promises. They remembered moments they never admitted still mattered. Most importantly, they remembered how different life felt when you were part of it. Don't skip. One evening a family gathering was organized to discuss a final marriage match. Relatives arrived dressed in their best clothes. Smiles filled the house. Laughter echoed through the rooms. Everything appeared perfect on the surface. The proposed bride or groom came from a respected family. The match seemed ideal. Every practical box had been checked. Stability, reputation, financial security, family approval, everything appeared exactly as it should. Your person sat quietly through the meeting. They answered questions. They listened politely. They smiled when expected. But inside, a storm was growing stronger. Then something unexpected happened. An elderly relative asked a simple question. It was not part of the plan. Nobody anticipated it. The relative looked directly at your person and asked, "Before we move forward, tell us honestly. Is there anyone you would choose if nobody else's opinion mattered?" The room became silent. For a brief moment nobody moved. The question seemed harmless. But to your person, it felt like the door to a prison had suddenly been opened. Their hearts started racing. Memories returned. Emotions they had buried came rushing back all at once. Every eye in the room focused on them. People expected a quick answer. Instead, your person remained silent. Seconds passed. Then more seconds. The silence became uncomfortable. Family members exchanged confused glances. Some laughed nervously. Others assumed your person was simply embarrassed. Nobody understood the battle happening inside their heart. Because in that moment they realized a terrifying truth. They were about to promise their future to someone while still carrying feelings for you. And for the first time, they could no longer pretend otherwise. Don't skip. That night your person barely slept. The relatives' question repeated endlessly in their mind. Is there anyone you would choose if nobody else's opinion mattered? The words echoed over and over. By morning they knew something had changed. The future everyone had planned no longer felt possible. Meanwhile, wedding preparations accelerated. Dates were discussed. Venues were considered. Guest lists were created. The family moved forward as though everything had already been decided. And eventually the invitations were printed. Stacks of beautiful invitations appeared. Names were written. Dates were confirmed. The future seemed official. Relatives celebrated. Friends sent congratulations. Messages flooded phones. Everything was moving exactly as expected. Except for one problem. Your person could not bring themselves to feel happy. Every invitation felt heavier than the last. Every celebration felt like a reminder of something missing. Every congratulation sounded strangely painful. Because despite everything happening around them, their heart still belonged somewhere else. It belonged to the person they never truly forgot. It belonged to you. One afternoon, while everyone else admired the finished invitations, your person picked up a single card and stared at it for a long time. The room was noisy, but they heard none of it. Their eyes remained fixed on the printed names. Suddenly a realization struck them harder than anything before. If this wedding happened, they might spend the rest of their life wondering what would have happened if they had been brave enough to choose you. That thought changed everything. For the first time, fear of regret became greater than fear of judgment. And once that happened, there was no going back. Because the next decision your person made would begin a chain of events that would shock every member of both families. A decision so unexpected that people would talk about it for years. A decision connected directly to your name. And before the invitations could reach every guest, a secret plan quietly began taking shape behind closed doors. Don't skip. The moment that thought settled inside your person's heart, everything around them began to look different. The invitations that everyone admired suddenly felt like evidence of a future they did not truly want. The wedding plans that had once seemed unavoidable now felt like chains tightening around them. For days they tried to silence the feeling. They told themselves they were being emotional. They told themselves they were imagining things. They told themselves that choosing family expectations was the mature decision. Yet no matter how many excuses they created, the truth refused to disappear. Every road led back to you. Every future picture led back to you. Every honest answer led back to you. And that frightened them more than anyone could imagine. Because by now the wedding preparations had become public. Friends knew. Relatives knew. Neighbors knew. Expectations had grown so large that backing out felt impossible. Hundreds of people were already talking about the wedding. Families were making arrangements. Money had been spent. Plans had been finalized. Walking away now would create chaos. But your person could no longer ignore what was happening inside. One evening they sat alone with a stack of invitations beside them. The house was quiet. Everyone else had gone to sleep. A single light illuminated the room. They picked up one invitation and stared at it for several minutes. Then another. Then another. The names printed on those cards felt foreign. Wrong. Incomplete. Almost as if someone else's future had been written there. And suddenly a memory returned. It was a memory connected to you. A moment many people would have considered insignificant. A conversation nobody else would remember. But your person remembered every detail. They remembered how safe they felt around you. They remembered how easily they could be themselves. They remembered how they never had to pretend. Most importantly, they remembered a promise they had silently made to their own heart years earlier. If they ever got married, they wanted it to be for love. Not pressure. Not convenience. Not approval. Love. The realization hit so hard that tears filled their eyes. For months they had been trying to convince themselves that love could be replaced. But deep down they knew the truth. You had never been replaced. You had only been hidden. Don't skip. The following week brought another family gathering. More wedding discussions filled the house. Everyone seemed excited except your person. Relatives talked about decorations. Others debated food menus. Some discussed guest seating arrangements. Your person sat quietly through all of it. Then a cousin jokingly asked a question. What if your first love suddenly came back tomorrow? The room exploded with laughter. People treated it as a harmless joke. But your person froze. For a split second their expression changed. Only one elderly family member noticed. And that family member immediately understood. The smile disappeared from their face. Because they saw something nobody else saw. They saw the truth. Your person was not laughing because the question was funny. They were silent because the answer already existed. That night the elderly relative approached them privately. No audience. No interruptions. No judgment. Just a quiet conversation. After a few moments of silence, the relative asked softly, "Are you making a mistake?" Your person's heart nearly stopped. For several seconds they could not answer. The relative continued, "I have watched you for months. Everyone else sees obedience. I see sadness. Everyone else sees agreement. I see hesitation. Tell me honestly, is there someone you still love? The question shattered the final wall. Your person lowered their head. And for the first time, they stopped pretending. The truth finally came out. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet confession spoken through trembling emotions. They admitted that despite everything that had happened, despite all the time that had passed, despite every attempt to move on, there was still one person they could not forget. One person they compared everyone else to. One person whose absence still hurt. One person whose name still felt like home. You. The elderly relative closed their eyes. Not because they were shocked. Because they already suspected it. What shocked them was realizing how deep those feelings still were. Don't skip. The days that followed became increasingly difficult. Your person tried to continue with wedding plans while carrying the weight of that confession. But once the truth had been spoken aloud, it became impossible to hide from it again. Every step toward the wedding now felt wrong. Every conversation felt forced. Every celebration felt empty. Then something happened that nobody expected. The final batch of wedding invitations arrived. These were the invitations that would be distributed everywhere. The official version. The version that would make the marriage impossible to quietly cancel. Family members gathered around excitedly. Boxes were opened. Cards were removed. People smiled proudly. And then your person held one in their hands. For several seconds they stared at it. The room buzzed with conversation. Nobody noticed the expression on their face. Nobody noticed the tears threatening to appear. Nobody noticed the silent decision being made at that exact moment. Because while everyone else saw an invitation, your person saw a choice. A choice between living the life others wanted, or living the life their heart wanted. For the first time, they chose their heart. And once that decision was made, everything changed. The next morning your person left home early. They told family members they had errands to run. Nobody questioned it. Nobody suspected anything. Hours passed. Then more hours. When they finally returned, they looked different. Calmer. Certain. As though a battle that had lasted months had finally ended. Nobody knew where they had gone. Nobody knew what they had done. Nobody knew they had just set into motion an event that would soon shake both families. Because hidden inside a small folder they carried was something nobody expected to exist. A redesigned wedding invitation. An invitation containing a different future. An invitation connected to a different name. Your name. And when the truth about that invitation was finally revealed, some people would cry, some would become angry, some would refuse to believe what they were seeing, and one family member would nearly drop the invitation from their hands after reading the shocking words printed inside. Because the wedding everyone thought was already decided was about to become something completely different. And the first person to discover the secret would accidentally uncover it in the most unexpected way imaginable. Don't skip. The folder remained hidden for several days. Your person carried it everywhere, protecting it as though it contained the most important secret of their life. In many ways, it did. Every time they looked at it, their heart beat faster. Every time family members discussed wedding plans, they felt the weight of that secret growing heavier. They knew they could not hide it forever. Sooner or later, the truth would come out. But nobody expected it to happen the way it did. One afternoon the house was overflowing with activity. Relatives moved from room to room discussing final arrangements. Phones rang constantly. Lists were checked. Decorations were being planned. Everyone was focused on the wedding. Everyone except fate. Because fate had its own plan. While helping organize documents, a younger family member accidentally picked up the wrong folder. Thinking it contained guest lists, they opened it without hesitation. Seconds later, confusion appeared on their face. They looked again. Then again. Certain they had misunderstood something. Their eyes widened. The paper slipped slightly from their hands. Because the invitation inside was not the invitation everyone had approved. It looked almost identical. Same design. Same colors. Same wedding details. But one thing was different. One name. A single name that changed everything. Your name. The family member stared in disbelief. For a moment they thought it had to be a printing mistake. Then panic set in. They rushed into another room. Within minutes more relatives had gathered. Whispers spread. Confusion turned into shock. Shock turned into chaos. People grabbed the invitation. Examined it. Read it repeatedly. Nobody could understand what they were seeing. The room filled with questions. Who changed this? Why was this made? What does this mean? And most importantly, was your person serious? Don't skip. The atmosphere became tense. Some relatives immediately assumed it was a joke. Others believed someone was trying to sabotage the wedding. A few family members demanded answers. Your person was called into the room. When they entered, dozens of eyes turned toward them. The invitation was sitting in the center of the table. Waiting. The secret was no longer hidden. Silence filled the room. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Finally, one relative held up the invitation and asked the question everyone wanted answered. What is this? The entire family waited. Some expected denial. Others expected excuses. But your person surprised everyone. For the first time in months. They did not hesitate. They did not look away. They did not hide. Instead, they calmly walked to the table, picked up the invitation, looked directly at everyone, and said words nobody expected to hear. It is the truth. The room exploded. Voices rose instantly. People interrupted one another. Arguments began. Questions flew from every direction. Some family members felt betrayed. Others felt embarrassed. Several became angry. Yet through all the noise, your person remained calm. Because something extraordinary had happened. The fear that once controlled them was gone. Months earlier they had been terrified of disappointing everyone. Now they were terrified of spending a lifetime pretending. And that fear was stronger. One relative demanded to know why they had waited so long. Another asked why they had agreed to the wedding in the first place. Then came the question that silenced the room. A family elder looked directly at your person and asked, "Do you love them that much?" Nobody breathed. Nobody looked away. The answer carried years of emotion. Years of silence. Years of unfinished feelings. Your person closed their eyes briefly. Then they answered, "More than I ever admitted." The room fell silent again. Because everyone could hear the sincerity, this was not impulsive. This was not confusion. This was not temporary emotion. This was real. Don't skip. For the next several days the family struggled to process what had happened. Some relatives continued pushing for the original wedding. Others slowly began understanding your person's decision. The house became divided. But something unexpected started happening. Stories emerged. Old memories surfaced. Friends revealed conversations your person had never shared. Relatives remembered moments they had overlooked. Piece by piece everyone began realizing the same thing. You had never truly left your person's heart. Not once. Even during the engagement discussions. Even during family meetings. Even during wedding planning. Your name had remained quietly present. Like a thread connecting every chapter of their life. The more people learned, the harder it became to deny the truth. Eventually even some of the strongest critics stopped arguing. Because they could see what your person had been unable to explain for so long. Love had survived. Not for weeks. Not for months. For years. And now it refused to stay hidden any longer. Then came the final family meeting. The meeting that would decide everything. Relatives gathered once again around the same table where so many arguments had taken place. The atmosphere felt completely different. No shouting. No accusations. Just honesty. The family elder who had asked the hardest questions stood slowly and addressed everyone. Then they turned toward your person. Their voice was calm. "If we force this wedding, we may gain approval from strangers." They paused. "But we will lose the happiness of someone we love." The room became emotional. Several relatives lowered their heads. Others wiped tears from their eyes. Years of expectations suddenly seemed less important than one simple truth. A marriage built on obligation could never compete with a marriage built on love. And at that moment, resistance finally began to disappear. One by one. Heart by heart. The family accepted what destiny had been trying to reveal all along. Your person had already chosen. Long ago. The invitation merely exposed the choice. Don't skip. The most beautiful part of the story was not the shock. It was not the arguments. It was not the dramatic discovery. The most beautiful part was what happened afterward. For the first time in a very long time, your person felt free. Free from pretending. Free from fear. Free from expectations that never belonged to them. And as they looked toward the future, one truth became clearer than ever. The wedding invitation everyone thought had been ruined was actually the thing that saved everything. Because without that invitation, the truth might never have come out. Without that invitation, they might have spent a lifetime wondering what if. Without that invitation, the love connected to your name might have remained hidden forever. Instead, destiny forced the secret into the light, and once it was seen, nobody could ignore it. Years from now, family members would still remember the day the wedding invitation changed.